You're listening to Voices of the Valley, brought to you in part by the Upper Ohio Valley Baptist Association and GodspeakTV.com. Your hosts are Ed Goodman and Chuck Morrow. So take a moment, sit back, and enjoy this episode of Voices of the Valley.
Welcome to Voices of the Valley. My name is Ed Goodman, the Director of Missions for the Upper Ohio Valley Baptist Association. And we are back again this week with Cleve Persinger with the West Virginia Convention of Southern Baptists. Cleve, it's good to have you in the studio with us.
Good to be back. Chuck, you should change your shirt.
You should have changed too.
And of course, we've got Chuck Morrow here in the studio with us as well.
Hey, for those of you who are just tuning in, you know, we do tape these a week in advance, so we're not wearing the same clothes 2 weeks in a row. So just want to air that out there up front.
Well, Cleve, we are so thankful that you've taken the opportunity to be with us.
I'm grateful to be here.
Last week's episode, we heard a little bit from your heart, and you shared with us your testimony and what God had done in your life in saving you, calling you to ministry, and how He led you in a sovereign and divine way right to the state of West Virginia.
Yes.
And I, for one, just want to thank you for being a partner in the gospel of Jesus Christ, because I consider it a great honor to be able to invest our lives in eternity.
I do too. And
Amen.
likewise to everyone in this room. I mean, the fact is, we could be a lot of different places, but we're right where God has called us. And
that's right.
And I'm thankful that you guys are here as well.
Well, we wanted to take the opportunity this week to focus on your area of expertise and how it pertains to the local church. And I told you my dirty little secret last week about how I categorize people. And I categorized you as a tech and media guru.
Tech and media guru. Right? That's better than a webmaster. I think that term has been outdated for a while. So.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Oh, man, I know. That has Halloween connotations to it.
Webmeister.
So, now, I know you get the chance to visit lots of different churches in West Virginia, right?
Yes, I do.
And even though you're a member at Resurrection Church, I guess they consider it a privilege to send you out.
Well, they did say that I was probably one more absence away from church discipline recently. No, I'm just kidding. No, they do, and I'm grateful for that. And the good thing is too, I travel around to a lot of churches, but in terms of church services, it's usually probably about once a month for me. And I'm glad, Dr. Hennard has been very specific about that because he wants me being in church with my family, my young family who's and my kids going to church, and so I'm grateful that I can be there for that. But when I visit churches, a lot of times I'll bring them along with me. It's part of it, and they love it.
Very good, very good. Yeah. So in your travels throughout the state, Cleve, where do you see churches excelling in West Virginia? What are they doing well?
Well, I think that churches have actually been excelling over the last couple of years in generosity. I see that not only from visiting the churches, but we see that through cooperative program giving has been up over the last 2 years.
That's a blessing.
It is a huge blessing. It is. No, it's huge. When I heard that this year, I knew we were up last year, and then it continued this year. It's huge for our churches, but also Ola Cox giving this year, $94,000 came in. Our goal was 100, but that was the most we've brought in. So
praise the Lord.
Yes, absolutely, and that goes back to the associations.
Yes, absolutely. That's the only reason I said amen. I know where my bread is buttered.
That's right.
So just to fill our listening audience in on what Ola Cox is, give us a brief overview of that.
Right, it's our state missions offering, and a lot of states that will have them. Interestingly enough, they're normally named after women.
Yes.
If you look at some other states, probably Kentucky's the same way.
Yeah, Kentucky has the Eliza Broad.
That's right. Yeah. So
missions offering, and that occurs every year around the end of summer, beginning of fall, in August and September. Right. And I'm really encouraged to hear that West Virginia Baptists are giving in increasing amounts.
They are. I see an increase in generosity, and part of that is, as a state convention too, we've been very intentional with resourcing our churches and our associations with what it means, in terms of biblical stewardship and generosity. And you see that happening more and more, that it's not fundraising, right? I mean, it is That's discipleship. Right. It is a spiritual discipline.
Yes.
And so that's been one good thing to see, that there's a light bulb coming on, that people and members, church members and church folks are responding in generosity to the generosity of the gospel, that Jesus poured out his life for us, and we are to pour out our lives and everything for him. For the spread of the gospel. So I've been really encouraged by those two things that I'm seeing currently.
Yeah, I can remember Adrian Rogers saying that you can tell a person's heart condition by looking at their financial records or their billfold.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah. Well, and one thing I like about that too is that in a state as small as ours, again, 230 churches. Not only that, in a state that sometimes comes across with this negative stereotype of a welfare state and receiving handouts, that our churches are actually reversing that trend and being generous with their finances. So it's a good thing to see.
On the same lines of that, do you see any areas where our churches within a state have some opportunities whenever you're out and about visiting with pastors and congregations?
Yes, actually, one of the things that has stood out is that our churches are hospitable, folks are welcoming, but I think our churches could do a better job as a whole of anticipating and expecting guests, because one thing I've seen through visiting churches is sometimes they're surprised when a guest shows up, right? And they're not eagerly anticipating their arrival. And something that we talked about earlier is that there's this visitor versus guest naming convention.
That's right.
And so whereas visitors are someone that might show up unexpectedly and you're kind of surprised to see them, a guest is someone that you eagerly wait for, and you're sad to see them go, but you've prepared for their arrival.
Absolutely.
And so I'd like to see our churches be more intentional with how they welcome guests. And one of the things I've told several churches too, this is that you may not have guests, you might not have guests for the last 6 months, but until you get in the practice of receiving guests, you might not ever have guests.
That's exactly right.
And then slowly a light bulb will come on for your folks that, we're welcoming guests, but you have to do things and have things in place. And like we said in the last broadcast, there is this idea of the gospel is offensive and nothing else should be. So you should remove all these other distractions, whether that means having a parking team, someone standing at the door, a first-time guest area. I mean, there are things that we can do actively to eagerly anticipate the arrival of guests.
So what I'm gathering from some of this is that really should be intentional.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely some intentionality. A culture of welcoming guests. And I'll tell you this too, one of the first churches I visited in West Virginia with my family, they were surprised about children showing up. Wow. So they didn't necessarily have something for children, and they had to get someone to watch. I felt kind of bad about that. And as a guest, I don't want to, you don't want to feel that way.
I can relate to that.
Mm-hmm.
I've been to a lot of churches over the last few years, and some of my travels, and I have 2 small children,
mm-hmm.
Right?
And when I go to a church, I'm hoping that it's like I don't want to pawn my kids off on anybody, But the thing is that there's something for them as well whenever we go into a church.
That means a lot to young families, of course. Of course it does. You want to have something for your kids.
And we can't have the incongruence of being people who affirm the family without anticipating that families are going to come to our churches.
Exactly.
I mean, there's even, dare I say, an element of hypocrisy in that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if we want to affirm the family, we have to prepare ourselves to receive families.
Right.
That's what we should want in our churches.
Exactly.
Healthy families that come.
Exactly.
And we're able to serve every age and lead them into deeper intimacy and discipleship with Christ.
Yeah.
Now, Cleve, because your area of expertise is tech, media, communications, partnerships, there could be a potential retort to that. and if people were to say, well, you know what, I don't see anywhere in the Bible that there is a mention of tech ministry or media ministry.
Right.
And so would you consider that tech ministry and media ministry would be essential to contemporary churches? If so, why? And if not, why not?
No, we should probably just cancel the podcast. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is the final episode of Voices of the Valley. We hope you've enjoyed.
Yeah, Cleve told us just to shut it off, so we're out.
That's right, because it's not essential, right? No, I think a good way of looking at it, guys, is that media is a medium, right? And not only is it a medium, to get the message out, it's really the biggest medium right now.
Absolutely.
And you look at ways that were communicated through the Bible, right? I mean, you have the synagogues, you have the public square, you have letters, Paul writing letters. I mean, that was the medium, walking and talking, right? The medium of the day. The message hasn't changed, but how we get that message out has. And so I think that not only is it important that churches embrace that, for instance, for social media and Facebook, for a lot of the negatives that you could say about that, that's where people are. And I think that not only should the church have a voice in those areas, but it should seek to redeem those spaces.
Amen.
Right? And we have the greatest story ever told.
That's right.
And we need to be out and about in a world of negativity. If that's how you view it online, I mean, we need to be there.
I see a lot of people think that, that whole fact that there's negativity out there. Those realms of communications are what you make it to be.
Exactly.
And if you use it for sharing what your church is about, we're either being part of the solution or being part of a problem.
Right.
And we can be part of the solution when we use these means of media.
And I compare it to restaurants having websites. We've moved a few places, and typically I'll look online to see if I pass a restaurant, I'm like, I wonder if their menu's online. Because why? I want to know what their menu is. I want to know if I can afford it.
That's right.
I want to know if it's kid friendly, if they have something kid friendly on the menu. And I think likewise, churches, when you think about websites and you think about Facebook, I mean, that is that first opportunity for, if you don't have any kind of presence online, that's hard for folks to find out about your church. They're judging you on that. I mean, it's almost like you're irrelevant if you don't have something online. And I'm not saying that every church needs to have a website. I'm just saying somehow to be able to find out about your church online needs to be there as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So tech and media can really be a way to be missional in today's culture. And so really it's a way to contextualize.
Yes, it is.
Now let's talk about how churches do church every Sunday. A lot of churches still have churches on Wednesday,
right.
Sunday evenings. And I know that a lot of the churches, at least in our association, would be considered smaller churches. Every church in our association runs under 200 on Sunday mornings, and the vast majority have less than 40 on Sunday mornings.
Right.
So let's say that there's a church that does not have a tech/media ministry. What would be some of the benefits that they could derive from getting that started?
So ways to get it started, one of the things would be to find out who is active on social media. I mean, I think that is a good way, and that's not just saying a young millennial. It could be a mom in the church, who, or maybe even a stay-at-home mom who's with her kids during the day, but you see is active or again posting actively. That's a good way to start. Again, and I know sometimes it's hard to trust someone with the ethos of your organization, your church, someone, but I think that's an easy way to start, is seeing who's currently active, who's an expert, for lack of better words, who's an expert in these areas. That's where I would start. But then past that, I think it's easy to get overwhelmed. I think there's two ways to look at this. It's easy to get overwhelmed and say, well, we'll never be able to compete with the media at X church or media in general. I think that's one way to look at it. I think another way is to try to take it all on at the same time. I think you need to start small and bite-size those steps. Yeah. So what does that look like? Is it, okay, we're going to start putting lyrics on the screen. I mean, maybe you start with that, or maybe it's,
sermon points.
Right, sermon points.
That's really helpful for me because I'm visual.
Right.
And so if I can see something written down, I'm probably 5 to 10 times more likely to retain that.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, pastors or preachers, if you want people to remember what you preached, giving them a visual
that
aid
can be huge.
Can be, massive.
Yeah. So looking for those little small points of entry and kind of baby step that would be, but you need a team, right? And that team could be one person, or it could be a handful of people. And I understand the smaller churches that can be hard to come across too as well. But I think that no matter where you're at in that, it's good to start small.
Now, has the state convention given you the liberty to help smaller churches address that those particular issues?
Yes, I've had churches reach out, and whether that be help with websites, or new bulletin shells, those types of things, or just where the best place to print. There are a handful of things that I've been able to assist with. When it comes to, we've been having these Strengthen and Send intensives where we've been able to sit down with churches and church leaders and go through a series of topics. And really the two topics that I'm covering right now is not necessarily communication, but generosity and stewardship, and also the Sunday morning experience. Because again, that is still, everything communicates, and so those are ways that on a larger scale that I'm able to pour in, and all of our staff really have different areas where they can pour in. But I am available to help. Usually, if churches are looking for someone to design and build the website, I'm not available in that area, and the only reason is because, again, with 230 churches, that may be impossible if every church needed a website.
It's a lot to ask
do.
for.
It's a lot to ask for. But I am a resource, and I have walked churches through where they should have where to obtain a website, how to update that website, and walk through tutorials as well.
When talking about social media, I know just a little bit ago you were talking about the mom that might be on Facebook all the time, that might be the one that could take over the social media side of things for the church.
Right.
When looking at that, there are some dangers in not the person, but there's some do's and don'ts that we should probably look at when it comes to either social media or even just the tech ministry within the church itself.
Right.
What would you say are some good don'ts
when
it comes to this? Yes.
Well, I'll tell you what. Maybe it'd be better to talk about do's, because and maybe we'll reach some don'ts in that, because I'm thinking immediately that some do's as far as specifically social media would be to find a way to schedule the posts out. That way that you can sit down on a Monday or a Sunday night or a Monday morning, and there are tools like Hootsuite or Buffer app, ways you can, even Facebook now allows you to schedule posts, and so to be able to schedule those out. But past that, what are you scheduling? Well, a helpful tool for churches who are interested in kind of dabbling in social media would be to come up with a posting schedule, so that you know that you're posting maybe the sermon audio on Mondays, and Tuesdays you're posting about an upcoming event at the church. Wednesdays is an encouraging Bible verse. Get in the practice of having a template, so that when you do ask someone to post, they're not just going willy-nilly. They're actually having a structure to follow when they're posting.
Yeah, intentionality in that. I think that's really helpful, and that's one of the things that the association, we actually follow that practice. We keep people updated on our Facebook group. We're transitioning to a page, and we're keeping people aware of events that are coming up. We post, articles from biblicalleadership.com, Lifeway Pastors, Tom Rainer, Ed Stetzer, Christianity Today, Gospel Coalition. And we try to, post things that are relevant from a church standpoint.
Right.
And so that's been a very helpful tool, being able to schedule posts. And Facebook allows you to schedule posts 60 days out. Right. So you can stay 2 months ahead of the curve.
That's right. So there's definitely some, now that they've allowed to do that and not having to use some third-party tools to schedule. I mean, even Instagram has scheduling tools now, and so there's definitely some good in being proactive and active and getting things posted out.
I like that you can just take an afternoon. I like that you can take an afternoon to be able to just do that, and then that takes a lot of the legwork out of it. The rest of for however long, and then you just schedule another day that you sit down and you schedule posts.
Right.
I know that's one thing that Ed works on, and Jonathan's going to be working on as well here in the future, and it's just very helpful.
Well, getting in a good rhythm too, so that people know when they can expect certain things is huge for social media as well. Yeah.
Do some of our churches possess common misperceptions, or do they make common mistakes with regards to tech and media ministry that you could speak to directly or that you have witnessed?
Yeah, let's see. That's a good question. I think several things would be, when you're talking about maybe a common misperceptions, is that, again, specifically talking about social media, or certain things, or maybe some new shiny things to install in your church, is that it's not a silver bullet. A lot of churches that if we could just do this, if we could just get a Facebook page, man, we would be able to hold the people in our church. And though it's helpful, it sometimes can magnify an unhealthy church, first of all. Second of all, you may pull a bait and switch. You may have, as Ron McCoy used to say, whiz-bang of a website.
Yeah.
But sometimes there's a bait and switch there because they're like, man, this looks like the church for me and my family. And they go, and then there's not even a children's ministry that you advertised on the Facebook page or the website. And so I think as far as some common misperceptions, those things happen. But then some common mistakes is that, again, getting back to what we just talked about a little bit ago, is that sometimes churches bite off more than they can chew. And I think it's important that you find those few areas that maybe you're lacking in, go after those without trying to bite off the whole thing. Because then when you try to do everything, not one thing is done with excellence, right? And so it's important that you do that. Another mistake in tech is that, again, churches not updating their website. I went to a website.
Thank you for saying that.
Yes, I went to a website a while back, and I think there was a Super Bowl party information, which doesn't sound so bad because we're just not that far removed from the Super Bowl, but it was from 2 years ago, Super Bowl. So it wasn't
Wow.
the most recent. That was the upcoming event, right? Mm-hmm. Not only that, but if I'm a visitor and I go to your website, I want to be able to know right away. I don't want to have to hunt for service times and location.
They say that the average time spent on a website for them to be able to be engaged is, you got less than 30 seconds. They want to know the time, the place, directions, and what's going on.
Right. Yeah. No, it's so important that, and I've seen a lot of websites going out there, and I'm not just talking about our state. I'm talking in general, church websites where it is a hard thing to find and have to hunt and peck and all that stuff. But past that, I would also say that too many communication touch points. And what I mean by that is, so many times churches say, well, we can get them on Facebook, we can get them on the bulletin, we can we can have our pastors stand up and give the announcements on stage. We're sure to reach everybody with announcements. And though that may make sense a little bit when you think about it, when you're providing so many, you're just adding noise, right? And so if you can define those few places where you can get the word out about events, people are going to be more proactive in hearing about those. I mean, I think about GPS and my phone. If my wife is in the car, and I'm listening, and I've got my GPS on, I'm more likely to hear from her. If she's pointing, I'm going to follow where she's pointing. Actually, let me back up. That's not where I was wanting to go. Okay, here's the thing. All right, so I compare it to GPS in my car. If I'm by myself and I have my GPS on, chances are I'm going to find where I'm going because there's one avenue of communication, and I'm following that communication. So many times my wife may be in the car and my GPS is on, and I don't listen to either one of them. I don't know how that works, but she may be pointing or I'm listening to that. Like I'm more, when you reduce the communication touch points, it makes your folks want to be more proactive in seeking out the information, because if it's coming from everywhere, it's just noise, and you're like, well, I'll hear it from somewhere else if I don't catch it today. So you're not as eager to hear that.
Yeah, that's a good point. So too much communication can be a bad thing.
Yes, because we're blasted by messages all the time.
Right.
Just again, that's the connected world we live in and the media-driven world we live in. So churches shouldn't add to that confusion, right? Churches should actually take it, as we talk about redeeming spaces. Let's provide very clear pathways for the communication.
What level of engagement are churches having with online giving in the contemporary church?
Oh, well, online giving from a standpoint of Resurrection Church, where I'm at now, over 50% of our folks give online, and that was similar, obviously, at the summit. One of the things is, when you talk about millennials and you're talking about just younger generation, I know, for instance, me, I don't carry cash in my pocket. I don't carry a checkbook either. And so one of the ways online helps is in having that having that avenue to give, is that you produce more consistent giving. And so there's an advantage there, especially in a state like West Virginia, where you don't get to have church 52 Sundays a year because of snow or bad weather. Again, be able to schedule and be able to schedule payment out and tithe out produces consistent giving there. But also, you show up to church, you want to give, you may not have your checkbook, you may not have cash. A church that also says, oh, but you can also give online and have that option available really will reach, or you just pull out your app, will really reach folks who aren't carrying that type of stuff too.
I know it's really useful talking to some other churches is that they can be able to accept larger gifts easier in that fashion.
Well, that's true. And one of the things too that that's overlooked a lot of times is that just like we do bill pay, a lot of times your bank will allow you to set up bill pay for vendors. Yeah. You can also set up bill pay to your church.
One of the avenues that I use when I talk to a lot of churches is that itself is that one of the donation options is a continual. You want a reoccurring donation,
right?
So you can have a reoccurring tithe.
Yes,
going.
You can. Right. So, definitely is an important thing. I know Tithely is a good tool for that. I've seen a lot of churches use Tithely. That's TITHE.ly. That's the website. Yeah. Tithely. Or if you just Google Tithely, PushPay. PushPay is another good. Again, be able to give from the app. Two good sources that I've seen. But I think it's an important thing for churches to have.
So if a church wants to explore some of the potential benefits of engaging media and tech ministry, or becoming more effective in media and tech ministry, I have opened the door for the churches of the Upper Ohio Valley Baptist Association to contact the associational office. And Jonathan Matthews and Chuck Morrow are both available. What are the ways that they can utilize you to enhance their media and tech ministry? Right.
Well, again, I love serving churches. I love being able to consult with churches in this regard. And what I want to do is to be able to think through solutions with the churches. Again, like I said a little bit ago, I as much as I would love to redesign a website for all the churches in the WVCSB, sustainable, I can't do that, but I can be a resource, and I have been a resource to be able to walk churches through those things. And so not only that, but as we talk about stewardship and generosity and the guest experience, I'm available to serve in those areas and send resources. Where do you print for cheap? Where can you get things printed, or bulletins, or anything, signs? I'd love to share those. And as we talk about the new website, we're working on currently a new WVCSB website. I want to provide communication resources on there. What I also want to do is Christmas graphics, right? I want to put out 5 to 10 every year that churches can download and use, and that goes for Easter graphics as well. Those types of things. So that's where I feel like at an institutional level I can be a resource without individually designing something for, for every
absolutely,
church. So,
yeah. Well, there's only one Cleve Persinger, and so we
thank goodness.
And as much as we would like to be able to clone you, we're not at that technological point yet. From a contemporary standpoint, if a church does want to get in contact with you, what's the best way to do so?
I am Cleve, Cleve, at wvcsb.org. And you can find me on Facebook. I'm Persinger, Persinger on Facebook. Instagram, I'm Cleve on Instagram too. So those are ways you can connect with me. And happy to serve.
Yeah, you can engage Cleve by email, online. You've got a lot of different connecting points. And so just remember, pick one and engage him, because many communication points are ineffective.
That's right.
Well, Cleve, we're thankful that you were able to stop by today.
Thank you guys.
Do you have any parting words of wisdom for our churches?
Well, I would say this. I lead a mission team every year of creatives and techies, and we pick an area to go to and serve. And as we do that, as we serve, again, we may serve 10 to 15 churches, doing things like video and logos and websites. It's just an intense week where we give time away and use our gifts on mission. But one of the things I always tell them, and one of the things I tell the techies and the creatives in churches, is that just because you're helping people tell people about Jesus doesn't mean that you're telling people about Jesus. And so as practical as it is in the ways we can give back and steward the gifts that God's given us, if we're not actively using our words, then we're not fulfilling our calling. And so look for opportunities, because it's easy to get complacent. Even for pastors too, I'm helping people tell people about Jesus. Yeah, no, I mean we've got to actively ourselves be telling people about Jesus.
Amen to that. Well, I tell you what, it's been great having you here. Those words of wisdom,
Amen.
we are so grateful for those, and we're grateful for your partnership in the gospel, and thankful that God has called you to West Virginia. And I look forward to many, many years, Lord willing, of us
Amen.
being able to serve together.
Amen. Well, I'm grateful for you guys as well. Thank you for what you're doing in Upper Ohio. This association is doing some really good things, and we're excited about what God's going to do.
Well, it's our privilege to serve, and that's all the time that we have for this broadcast. Remember, as you go about your life today, be sure to be God's voice in the valley.